Hello, and thanks so much for checking out the Coin Stories podcast video page. I'm Natalie Brunell, and I'm talking to the leading voices in Bitcoin about their backstories, career paths, and why they believe in BTC. This podcast does not provide financial advice. This episode was brought to you by the Bitcoin Conference. The event will be held in Miami next year, April 6th through 9th, and it will be the biggest Bitcoin conference yet. Head to b.tc/conference and use the code COINSTORIES for 10% off your tickets. Ticket prices go up next week. I'm super excited to share my guest today is Tone Vays. Tone is a Bitcoin analyst, a derivatives trader, and a popular YouTube and Twitter personality. Tone went from working on Wall Street to traveling the world speaking about Bitcoin, and he also produces 3 popular events: Unconfiscatable, Understanding Bitcoin, and the Financial Summit. Here's Tone. Okay, Tone, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate getting the chance to talk to you. You're very popular in this space, so I want to learn a little bit more about you, and I want to start all the way at the beginning. I saw you went to school in Florida. Are you from there?
No, I was actually born in the Soviet Union. And thank you, Natalie, for bringing me on the show. And looking forward to the whole interview. So I was born in the Soviet Union, and my family immigrated over to the US in late 1990s is when we came over. I was young back then, but right now it's the world is changing politically, and that's why I've been so vocal about the political nature of the whole world, basically based on where I came from.
Yeah, what parallels do you see? Like, I mean, obviously you were young when you came over, but what do you remember? What did your parents tell you about their life there?
Well, I remember some of it, and life was definitely simple. Like I remember one of my vividest memories was eating bananas once a year. That was like the ultimate treat is like when my parents were able to score bananas on the black market, and then you have to like wait for like a week or two to watch them ripen in like a dark closet wrapped in newspaper. So you didn't have a lot of the stuff that you're used to in the US. So it's things like that, things like it's a communist country, like you don't really own any property, and your income equality, right? But that's not good. Like doctors make as much as teachers, and neither one is making good money. So, the reason why my parents fled the Soviet Union is for capitalism, for opportunities. And watching the whole world locked down, not allowing people to leave because of COVID, reminds you of that. I mean, it took people decades to get the paperwork to leave the Soviet Union. That's what happened with us. And we left right before the collapse. But this idea that you're not allowed to leave your own country is really, really bad. And that really reminds me of what was happening then, what's happening now. We're looking at Australia, Canada, like it's not allowing people to leave.
Do you remember at all the journey from the Soviet Union to the US and what that was like, and your family kind of starting over here? Because I've also heard the stories of people not being able to bring a lot of things when they immigrated, right? But if you had Bitcoin back then, you could have brought the wealth of your family, whether it's small or big, with you across the ocean and no one would even know, right?
Exactly. And I talk about this all the time. This is my number one use case for Bitcoin, transferring value cross border. And I know a lot of governments hate that because they do want to restrict you. Not able to bring a lot is a very generous statement. We were allowed to leave with 100 US dollars per person in a family. That's it. And like 2 suitcases worth of your stuff. And they also like check you on the way out and like shake you down. So if you have a little too much jewelry, they're gonna confiscate some of that. And so that's it, $100 to start a new life. We spent about a month in Austria in some hotel, like a hotel for refugees leaving Soviet Union, about a month there. And then about 4 to 6 months in Italy, waiting for green cards to come to the US. Now in Austria, the hotel was kind of taken care of by certain organizations that would help people leave Soviet Union. But in Italy, there was no financial help at all. So in Italy, family had to find a way. Like you spend like the first week or two in what looks like a wooden like camp, until you try to find the parents, try to find a job, try to find an apartment. I was about 10 years old, 9, 10 years old. I remember my fell on my birthday too when I was there. That was in one of the immigration offices on my birthday. But when I was in Italy at 10 years old, I was also working. I was washing car windows in the middle of red lights with like a squeegee, like running out into the middle of the street. Yeah, so that was my life growing up, and then coming to the U.S. basically with the $100 per family member that you got to leave. I mean, it is 1990 $100. So maybe in today's money, it's what, 500, 600, maybe 1,000 at best. Still not a lot. And then whatever money you earned in Italy before you're coming over, and then boom, start a new life. You don't know the language, and but you know what? It's hardworking people. My mom was a doctor back in Russia. She was never a doctor in the U.S. because licenses don't transfer. My dad was like, taxi driver and pizza delivery and like whatever odd jobs, like selling cemetery plots, like whatever, working at a lamp factory. So that's how it was. I was on food stamps. It was called food stamps back then, when I went to middle school and high school in Brooklyn. So that's kind of how I grew up, fairly poor. And then went to undergrad, ended up in grad school at Florida State, and got my degree in financial engineering. I was a high school teacher for a year in between that, but then I wanted to make some money too. So that's how I went to Florida State, had a scholarship there. So I got my financial engineering degree, didn't have to pay much for that. That was good. And I got the Wall Street job after like another year of teaching college. It's like an adjunct professor. Stayed on Wall Street for about 10 years. And then Bitcoin really changed everything because I realized that unconfiscatable property. When I watched the Cyprus banks shut down in 2013, and people just had their money confiscated out of the bank. That property plus the censorship resistant value transfer, the ability to now flee a country if you don't like the politics of that country with all the value in your head. And while I wasn't really all that big on the monetary policy side of it, Bitcoin will only have 21 million Bitcoin, and I do like the hard money aspect of it. But it is debatable whether some kind of a more elastic monetary policy is better than hard money. I know even the other people in the Bitcoin space would kill me for even saying that. I like the fact that it's hard money. It's definitely the lesser of two evils. It does come with its own problems, but these problems are not as bad as infinite 2% inflation forever. But it's not even 2% inflation, right? If it was mathematically done, it would be better than people just randomly deciding on how much money to print. That's the bigger issue. So the hard money aspect of Bitcoin ensures that the price of Bitcoin will go up forever. Like Michael Saylor says, as long as more people around the world find Bitcoin more useful and use it and start adopting it. All right, I'll stop there, wait for more questions.
Yeah, well, I want to get to when you discovered Bitcoin, but I want to back it up a little bit because I want to hear about your time on Wall Street and also even before that. When you guys moved here and you mentioned that your dad was doing odd jobs as a kid, like what were you like? Did you pick up the language quickly? Did you envision yourself someday having a job where you make a ton of money? Because obviously it wasn't an easy journey for your family. Like what were you like when you were young?
I picked up the language fairly quickly. So one of the things that I guess my parents did right back then is they did not move into a Russian neighborhood where everyone speaks Russian. So I didn't really grow up with a lot of Russian friends. I acclimated fairly quickly to the language. But, and there's a big but coming. I did not have like these grand plans that I would be making ridiculous money because I wasn't a very good student. And even back in Russia. So even back in Russia, you know how like Russians, Chinese, they always have this stigma of how they're good in math and science. That's actually true. I was good in math. I was good in math. I was good in science. I really liked science, but I didn't really have a choice because I was terrible at English. I can speak English. My grammar is good, but my spelling is horrendous. Like honestly, like a fifth grader spells better than me. And that's not really a language barrier. It's a little bit of a language barrier, just made it worse. But it's also like even back in Russia, like my math grades were always like A's, but my Russian grades, like like the equivalent of English classes in Russia, it's Russian classes, the literature classes, they were horrendous even back then. I could barely pass. Like I still read at like an eighth grade level. Like I read really, really slow. My reading comprehension is good when I focus and pay attention. So as far as I know, I am totally dyslexic when it comes to spelling and when it comes to like reading speed, things like that. So everything I've done, I had to get around that that problem, that barrier. So my math and science grades would make up for my terrible English and history grades. History was another subject I was terrible in. Now I love history. Well, like I read blogs. My reading attention span is terrible. Like I can't read a book. I've probably read, I would say, 5 novels in my life. Just 5. Well, like I can't finish it. Like I don't have the. I'll listen to it on tape. Like I have to go back and listen to Animal Farm in 1984 and some of the other books, and I had to listen to even Saifedean's The Bitcoin Standard. You've read it, right?
Yes, I've read it 3 times.
Right. I had to listen to it on tape. I would have never, ever, ever finished that book. The only Bitcoin book that I've actually like read is Bitcoin Clarity, because that book is more technical. Like I would rather read a chemistry textbook than a novel because for me it's just easier. So when we talk, so when you ask the question like what did I think I would do, like what would I accomplish, like I don't know, because I was barely passing like English and reading classes all through high school, and I even failed a few classes. But in college, I was able to specialize. In college, I was able to pick my majors. So I was a math and science major. I have a degree in geology. I have a degree in mathematics. And in my university, I had a very good GPA. Like I barely left high school with a B average, but I left my university with 172 undergrad credits. I did over 6 years worth of work in 5 years, and I left with 2 independent degrees because there I was able to specialize and actually do what I did well. And I had 2 jobs too, because again, my family was not wealthy at all. So to pay for college, I had 2 jobs while taking on 2 full degrees. One of those jobs was driving one of those safety vans. It was like a 15-passenger van around campus and to some spots off campus, like residential housing, till like 2 in the morning on weekdays and 4 in the morning on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So that was one of my jobs in the university.
That's fascinating. It's so interesting how people have different learning styles, and a student could be really, really good in the arts, but then not do great on math or vice versa. And it's really fascinating. So
Failed a music class in high school.
you
I
failed
failed
music?
music. That was one of my F's. Yeah.
Well, clearly your brain likes numbers and statistics. What exactly? I saw that you got a master's in financial engineering. What the heck is financial engineering?
So financial engineering is this strange major. It's not really a proper major. Most colleges call it different things. Some colleges call it mathematical finance. Some colleges call it different things. So it's basically a combination of math, finance, statistics, and programming. So it's used for modeling. Like it's the math behind the finance. So at Florida State, this program was run by the math department. But in order for me to graduate, I'm taking classes from the graduate classes from finance department, graduate classes from the math department, graduate classes from computer science department as well. Though not really computer science department, but it's basically all of our math and finance projects involve programming. So the job that I got afterwards was programming risk models, but I'm not really programming the risk models. My programming skills were not good enough for that. I know how to program, but I wasn't good enough. So I was doing other stuff, but with the risk model. So I was the data guy. So when you have a risk model, like a hedge fund would outsource the risk of their portfolio to a third party company like we were. And we have to build that risk model. And so we have quants and quantitative finance is another name for it. Quants and PhDs, like physics PhDs, that write these financial models. Then you have pure programmers that just convert what they scribble down in code into actual functioning, fast operating code. But then those C++ and C# programmers need to work with the database team in order to pull the data that's going in the model and out of the model. But the model itself requires financial data. So one of my tasks was making sure that the data going into the financial model from our data sources like Bloomberg and Thomson Reuters, who are the biggest data providers in the world, at least in the US markets. I got to make sure that that data is legit, that that data is clean, and that that data is, functioning on either a daily basis, weekly basis, depending on the data. So I'm responsible for the data going into the model. I'm responsible for generating the risk model. I'm responsible for checking and validating the risk model, just so that our clients, external, or our financial team, internal, can go ahead and use those models. And then I'm also responsible for any like bugs or new features, because I can speak to developers, I can read code, I can understand code, and I'm also understand finance. So when the developers don't understand finance, I need to explain it to them. So it's kind of like this in-between job between the finance people and the programming people.
And that was your first job on Wall Street based on what you studied?
Yeah, that was my first job and my last job. So I was basically spent 10 years in that risk modeling space, though through 4 different companies, because one of them was Bear Stearns, which went under in 2008. So I was there for that. So all in all, it was 4 companies. The job was different, but in the same realm. But throughout most of that, I just wanted to be a trader. So maybe I should have been a little more eager to quit the risk modeling space and go into on the opposite side of the equation, instead of risk modeling, actual trading. So I would just trade on my own. So I learned to trade right before I got that first job. So after grad school, I really kind of got liking, I really took a liking to trading. I took a technical analysis course, very similar to the one that I teach today. And I learned technical analysis and how to trade. The problem was I didn't have any money. So I spent every dime I had learning how to trade, and now I have nothing to trade with, and I can't literally borrow any more money because my parents were already helping me take that course after around the time I was finishing grad school. So I scraped whatever money I could to just start trading on my own back in early to mid 2000s. And I ran out of money trading because I kept shorting the real estate market too early. And then I ended up with a job at Bear Stearns that a year later I lost the job because the real estate market crashed, right? So, but I immediately got a new job. I immediately got, so my first portfolio didn't do very well because I ran out of money shorting real estate just a year too early. It was just a year too early. I gave up. I couldn't trade. I didn't have any more money trading. And in 2007, I got the job at Bear Stearns, and in 2008, Bear Stearns went under because of the real estate crash that I couldn't keep my portfolio going. Like the market stayed irrational longer than I stayed with them. So I was always like trading on the side, but when I was working for Bear Stearns and JP Morgan, I couldn't really trade. Like there were so many restrictions on trading. So the last job that I took on, my last like 3 to 4 years before I quit, I took a lower salary. I took like a 20 to 25% pay cut in my salary to go to a small boutique firm that did not have any proprietary hedge fund data like my prior firms. So we were building risk models and the clients used them independently. And one of the reasons why I took on that last job was so that I had no trading restrictions. And now I could trade and work at the same time. And that's when you realize that trading and working at the same time, you're screwing up one of those two jobs. So when I concentrate too much on trading, I'm a bad employee. And when I'm a good employee, I am not a great trader. So after a few years of being frustrated on that end, I said, you know what, I'm going to quit and I'm just going to be a full-time trader. But I didn't just quit. I'm pretty risk averse. I don't like taking on big risks.
You have to like risk if you're a trader.
Yeah. Well, you do have to like risk if you're a trader or a gambler, but you can still do it safely. And it's also different, right? Like when you are a trader trading, at least you're trading with money you're willing to lose, right? Quitting your job and depending only thing on trading is a different kind of a risk environment. Well, look, I'll walk into a casino like anyone else, and have a really fun time for a night, but I'm not gonna quit my job and move into the casino. Those are two different risk profiles. So when I was quitting that job, and I didn't do it right, I made mistakes there also. I really thought I was more important to that job than I was. And I kind of, as a nice guy, I told them, hey, you know what? I'm gonna be leaving. I'm happy to transition over the next 6 months. And then they basically told me, no, it's okay. You can just be gone in 2 weeks. So I anticipated, some more income, and this happened at like the worst time when Bitcoin was really cheap and low. It was in 2015 when Bitcoin was like $200 after a year and a half bear market. And I started a physical business. I don't talk about it much. I still own a physical business. I'm a 50% owner of a physical business in New Jersey. It's in the healthcare space. But that business cost me a lot of money and it was never profitable. It's still, surviving, but I've never made a dime. But the $50,000 to $75,000 I invested in that business back in 2015 at the lowest price of Bitcoin in my Bitcoin career, like instead of accumulating Bitcoin at that price, I ended up, I don't like discussing it, but that was one of my hedges, is that, hey, this physical business should really work out. I don't know if this Bitcoin thing is going to work out. And especially after watching it go down from 1,300 down to 100. Also, I started doing some media. I started speaking at conferences because remember, I was a teacher. I like teaching. I'm good at teaching. I'm just bad at writing. I'm bad at writing and I'm a very slow reader. But I'm very good at explaining things. I'm very good at teaching. The other job that I had while in college was a tutor. So those were my two jobs. And there was a third job in college because throughout 5 years in college, I had 3 jobs or 2 at the same time. And the other one was in athletics. So when I was, I kind of stopped playing sports recently, but I was always pretty athletic. So I was also a referee for intramural sports. I played volleyball for almost 20 years, starting from high school all the way through Bitcoin, keeping me busy the last 5 years. That's when I finally stopped playing volleyball. So, wait, how do we get on the sports angle there for a second? That's how I ended up in the sports healthcare space. So I have the business there, and public speaking and teaching is what I really like doing. So me traveling the world and speaking at conferences was becoming really, really fun. It was kind of those volunteer careers. I also started traveling. So the other thing is, when I left the Soviet Union, right? So not counting a month in Austria and like 6 months in Italy when I was 10 years old, and not counting Canada, because I grew up in New York, Canada's right there. And I was studying geology in my university in upstate New York. So we would go to Canada regularly for geological mining expeditions. I actually worked a lot with asbestos. And it was my professor's specialty. So I was not counting Canada and Europe when I was 10 years old. I didn't leave the US. I didn't go on vacation to a foreign country until I was about 27 or 28 years old for the first time.
Wow.
We never really had money for like a family, flying trip, right? Just around the US. I would fly around the US, I hiked the Grand Canyon. Again, a lot of those trips had to do with geology, like hiking the Grand Canyon, doing a expeditions in Yellowstone,
Yeah.
things like that. But as far as me going on vacation somewhere, and I like to save money as well. Like I didn't want to live at home. I mean, I moved out at 17 when I went over to college. I've never really lived with my parents. I was always just on my own, living on my own, always working since the age of 13. When we came to the US, I was 13 when I started high school, and I was already working illegally, of course, at $4 an hour because the minimum age was 16. I was like mopping floors and washing dishes of an ice cream shop that was like at the bottom of my apartment building that I lived in. So that's pretty much been my life until I finally got that Wall Street job. And also 7 years in school, right? So it was 5 years in undergraduate, then 1 year as a high school teacher, then 2 years in graduate school at Florida State, then like a year and a half of being a college adjunct professor while learning how to trade because I had no experience to get the Wall Street job. At the same time, I didn't want to live at home. I'm already like 26, 27 years old with all that school, which I can make an argument for both sides of that. And so next thing I finally saved enough money for vacation and I'm 28.
Wow. Wait, I have a question. I have a question about your trading. At what point when you were working on Wall Street did you make like your first huge amount of money? Like did you make $1 million at one point and think, "Oh my gosh, I've made it. I now have money." Like when did it happen for you that you actually were making money and felt secure?
No, it took a while. Because even when I switched those jobs, like back around 2010, when I switched the jobs from a high-paying job to a lower-paying job in order to trade on the side, I think I quit like $170,000 salary for like 120 or $130,000 salary with bonuses. So again, my jobs were in risk analysis. Trading was just my passion, and because of math and because of numbers, and I didn't get to do it full time until after I fully quit, and then I immersed in trading, and that was around 2015, around 2015, 16. But that's also at the same time I started finally traveling. Like I went on one vacation. I think my first one was to Trinidad for Carnival, and that was like around 2008 to that was like 2009 or something like that. And then in 2010 I went to the Philippines with a friend of mine, and that was like my only two experiences of leaving the country. And then I was working on my businesses, working on trading, and then I traveled again out of the country in 2014 when I spoke at my first Bitcoin conference in Hong Kong, and that's when I really fell in love with traveling and trading. See, it's not about the money. It's not about how much money you make. It's doing something you really like while also sustaining your living. So I loved it. Like I loved going back on stage. That was like in 2014, speaking at my first Bitcoin conference was the first time I stood on stage educating since I was a college adjunct professor back in like 2005, 2006. So it took 10 years for that. And the reason why I finally wanted to quit Wall Street and start trading on my own, yeah, of course, the money's nice. But if you're good at trading, there's also a lot of risk. But the main reason is to be independent, not to have a boss, to actually, like I meet people, like I meet like 22, 23-year-olds that have traveled the whole world. And I was like, what, 33? And only been to like 3 countries since I turned 18, well, like adult age, right? Because again, nothing counts when you're 10 years old. And I'm like, you know what? Like trading, like full-time trading can wait. I did it for a few years, and I'm a good teacher. So people really like learning from me. They trust me. They trust the fact that I'm honest, and I've been honest. I've been honest with my whole community. I've been honest on my YouTube channel, and that's why people and I teach trading cheap. Like the stuff that I teach for $500, I paid $8,000 to learn that, and that was back in like 2003. So you can adjust for inflation how much $8,000 were, and I teach that as cheaply as I can. I have free tutorials, and the main reason why I didn't want to work anymore for anyone is because I just wanted to be fully independent, not to have a boss, make my own schedule. And I just fell in love with travel. And that's why COVID hit me so hard, is that it really like destroyed my lifestyle of traveling and public speaking because I don't get paid to public speak at conferences. I'll occasionally put in like a $2,000 or $3,000 speaking fee, but mostly I just want my expenses covered.
Yeah.
And I just like traveling, seeing new countries, returning to old ones that I really like. This is why I like spending time here in Dubai. I went to Tanzania earlier this year just because they had no COVID restrictions. Spent time in Mexico again because they had no COVID restrictions. And trading will be there like when I'm ready to retire and settle down, have a family. And I'm getting old, so I don't know. I should think about that somewhat.
Wait, I
How
want
is
to
it
ask.
going anyway? Yeah.
I want to ask you about Bitcoin specifically. Like, when did you first hear about it? Were you in school or were you on Wall Street? And what made you kind of start to learn about it and think, oh, this isn't just some project and it's going to go away or it's going to drop to zero. This is something I believe in and I want to speak about it. Like, when did that happen for you?
Yeah, so I first heard about it. Everyone says that they've been into Bitcoin since 2010, 2011. If I had a dollar for every person that told me they've been in Bitcoin, in 2009, the year it was born, I would be a lot richer today. Trust me. No, I legitimately heard about it in very late 2010 or very early 2011, because I remember the reason why I heard about it, and that's when that reason was popular. It was the WikiLeaks incident. Have you read up about it? You're probably too young to remember it.
No, I know. Yeah.
But so when WikiLeaks got cut off from Visa, PayPal, Mastercard, they resorted to accepting Bitcoin as payment. But there was a 6-month window between the start of the discussion of WikiLeaks accepting Bitcoin and WikiLeaks actually accepting Bitcoin. So the discussion began in December 2010, but they didn't start accepting it until like June, July 2011. So somewhere in that window, I started hearing about WikiLeaks for the first time. Now, the reason why I started hearing about WikiLeaks was because of Max Kaiser's show, Kaiser Report on RT. And the reason I was watching RT in 2011 is because I was following the Ron Paul campaign for president for 2012, because coming through with 7 years of liberal education, I almost got kicked out of my family for voting for Barack Obama in 2008, because as a Russian immigrant family, and if you look at the voting map of New York City, the Russian areas of Brooklyn are like dark red. Like people that leave communist countries, Cuba, Venezuela, Russia, they will never vote for a Democrat for any office position in anything. So they will only vote Republican. They will never vote Democrat. And but I was too young because I was brought up fully through the U.S. educational system, which completely leans left, completely. So in 2008, I voted for Barack Obama, and like I admit it, again, the honesty of my channel, that's what keeps my diehard subscribers. But I voted for him on his initial campaign to end government spying, which he did not. And in fact, he did the complete opposite. So in 2012, that's when I started realizing, wow, I can't believe I voted for a Democrat. And that's like, wow, my parents were right. And this is really bad. And I don't want to turn your show too political, but so that's how I ended up trying to follow Ron Paul, because he was basically the person that I really wanted in that election. That election ended up being Barack Obama versus, I believe, was it John McCain? It was McCain or Romney. I'm already forgetting which one it was. But I didn't like the Republican candidate at all, so I ended up voting for Gary Johnson. So it was a wasted vote for, the Libertarian is not going to win, but I wasn't going to vote for like them. So in any case, that's how I heard about Bitcoin, just watching RT, because it's the only place you can actually get some unbiased news. At least I thought that way. But it wasn't enough to get me involved. It was just like interesting. And then I kept hearing about it in 2012. But then in 2013, with the Cyprus banking confiscation, because I saved money. Like I ended up buying an apartment. It was at a bad time. It was like in 2008. Ironically, I bought an apartment, but I needed my own place. I got tired of moving. So, like between the years of 2000 and I want to say when I moved to Florida, so 2000 and like two, all the way up until 2009, or even like from the year 2000 to 2009, I moved apartments every single year, and I just got so tired of it. Moved states, I just kept moving, and I'm like, I got tired of it. I wanted to buy a place, so I was always saving money. And when the Cyprus, and I continued to save money after I bought my apartment, which is why I didn't go on vacation. I didn't take any like extra off days. I would like, just try to save as much money as I can. That's kind of how my family grew up, with leaving Soviet Union, growing up in a communist country. Just save what you can. You save whatever food you can. So I still have that mentality. Like, it doesn't matter how much money I have, I'm always going to be hesitant to spend and or splurge too much. So with that savings, so I had a decent amount of savings in 2013. And then I watched the Cyprus bank confiscation as a bank bail-in, where the government confiscated 50% of everyone's money above 100,000 euros. And here I am with, over $100,000 in a bank account because I've been saving from my Wall Street job. And I'm like, what do you mean the government just took your money out of your bank? And that's when Bitcoin finally clicked. And this is also why I own Unconfiscatable.com, because to me, that is the most important property of Bitcoin, unconfiscatability. I mean, sure, the fact that there's 21 million Bitcoin is nice, and the fact that you can like fund WikiLeaks and you can buy anything over the web, and you can send money to anyone, and nobody can stop that transaction. But the unconfiscatability is absolutely critical, because it is the first time in human history you can own something of value that someone with a bigger gun cannot take away from you, because they don't know what's in your head. And I keep saying a joke, maybe one day the movie Inception will come true, and now the Bitcoin in your head is no longer safe, because that is the ultimate secret that people will try to get into your head to get. Yeah. But that unconfiscatability property finally got me interested in Bitcoin to the point of maybe I should buy some.
So did you buy a lot, or how did you start? Did you start to accumulate? Did you sell when it had a bull run? Because I feel like everybody's journey, especially if they were in very early, it was like they bought, but then it ran up, and then they sold, and then they had to get back in. Like, what was your journey?
Yeah, it was rocky, and we'll probably do this interview like a year or two from now, and I might get into the details then. But it was definitely rocky. It's not like, well, when people say, "Oh, Tone's an early Bitcoiner and he's a rich early Bitcoiner." No, that's not true. My story is more similar to like Andreas Antonopoulos, because in 2015, when I did quit my job 6 months earlier than expected, and I had the physical business that I needed to financially support, and there were other expenses that I had to spend money on, and I no longer had a salary coming in to buy cheap Bitcoin at $200. So my journey through, and there were some investments that I made in the early days that, this is why I warn people, my expertise is not VC, my expertise is not investing in companies. Some people did it well, Trace Mayer, even Roger Ver, they funded Bitcoin companies, and that helped the space grow a lot. I did not pick wisely. Let's put it that way. And I never got into the tokens. I never got into the the shit coins, as I like to call them. But yeah, maybe one day I'll talk about the details of that early journey. But yeah, I'm more on that Andreas Antonopoulos scale. If you know his story of being in Bitcoin since 2011, but he never really had that much Bitcoin, because he spent all his time educating and actually spending the Bitcoin to live on. So my story is closer to Andreas, than closer to, say, a Roger Beer.
Wow. Okay. So I'm assuming though you've continued to accumulate since then, right? Do you get paid in Bitcoin and now do you have the majority of what you're worth in Bitcoin?
No, not many people pay in Bitcoin. I have to open up like a US company because people pay in US dollars. And I'm happy to just help grow the space. So most people pay in dollars. I do what I can. I do hold my entire retirement account in Bitcoin because for tax reasons. So that is where I take advantage of it. I know a lot of people don't like it because it's not real Bitcoin. It's not holding real Bitcoin. And but for tax purposes, that's how I'm doing it because I do believe that Bitcoin is going to go up a lot, and I don't want to pay taxes on that. So one of the things that I did several years ago is convert all my retirement funds into self-directed IRAs. I then converted them into Roth IRAs. So now the Bitcoin that I have sits in completely tax-free accounts legally, and all the gains of Bitcoin's appreciation is tax-free as well through a Roth IRA. So good thing I kept putting money aside into my actual IRA while I was working on Wall Street.
Is that through GBTC then? Is that what you hold?
At the moment, it's through GBTC, but once a better ETF comes out, it would all be migrated.
Wow. Wow, that's fascinating. That's really interesting. I mean, what do you think about where the space is right now with like US bank regulators looking to allow traditional banks to hold Bitcoin, the ETF that was approved that Bitcoiners say, don't go that route. You should self-custody your own coins. We have a recent all-time high price. What do you think about the place we're at right now with Bitcoin?
I think it's great. So initially, at first announcement of El Salvador, the El Salvador announcement is so huge. And at first, when I heard about it, I was a little bit skeptical on how good it actually is. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how important it is. In that, look, Bitcoin, priority number one for those looking at Bitcoin is it's a store of wealth. It's an unconfiscatable, censorship-resistant store of wealth. That is priority one. Priority two is the currency aspect of Bitcoin, actually using it for payment for goods and services. Like the reason why people don't really pay me in Bitcoin is because they want to hold on to their Bitcoin. Don't pay me on their credit cards. Don't pay their credit cards a month later, right? And that makes sense. It makes absolute sense. Like I don't want to force anyone to pay me in Bitcoin. Pay me in dollars. Hold your Bitcoin. You holding on to your Bitcoin helps me as well. And I got expenses because I don't really make much money. I mean, I'm organizing these conferences now, so hopefully, as those become more popular, we'll get more sponsors. I take on all the risk myself of the conferences. So conferences, some education. I don't really do much affiliate revenue yet. Maybe I'll start that again. I'm just trying to be as ethical as possible in this space because, as you know, you do the smallest thing that you think is good for the space, and you just get destroyed, even by the people that you like.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about that too, because you've done paid courses, right? You teach people. What do you think about, when you get blowback like that?
You just got to act rationally and you got to explain your position. So, and I don't mind doing that. I just explain to people, look, I know you can learn trading and technical analysis for free on the internet, but you could also get scammed for free on the internet, right? So if you pay $1 for something, but it ends up costing you thousands of dollars, is that really a good education, right? Versus spending $500 and even realizing maybe trading's not for me because you learned it properly and you realize how hard it really is. So you just got to explain it to people, and if they don't like it, they don't have to. Again, it's you're not promising them anything. You're just trying to educate. So you just have to live with it, and people will eventually get used to it. But yeah, you have another question? Otherwise, I'll talk about El Salvador.
Well, yeah, no, continue talking about El Salvador, and I also just wanted to hear more about how you built up this following, because now you speak across the world about Bitcoin. You have this popular YouTube page, you have a massive following on Twitter. Like, how did that all happen in the Bitcoin world for you?
It just happened organically. I didn't jump into it. One of the things that disappoints YouTubers and podcasters the most is they start a podcast and they expect everyone to start listening to them. That's not how it works. It's actually really hard to build up a following. So it starts slowly. I go to my first. I attended my first conference. It was in New York, Inside Bitcoin's New York, April 2014. And I just asked really good questions to the speakers. And my questions got noticed by this crazy libertarian personality named Ernest Hancock. And he has a libertarian show on like Freedom Radio. And I ended up getting an interview on his show, and he didn't even remember why he had me in his book as a person to interview. I wasn't even a speaker. I was just a guy asking good questions. But I go on his show. We have like a good discussion about libertarianism and Bitcoin and money and economics. And then I used that interview and my Wall Street like status of working on Wall Street to get a speaking gig at a conference in Hong Kong. Same conference, Inside Bitcoin's taking place a month later. My company had an office in Hong Kong. I was working with that office every morning that I would come into work, and just like my morning, their evening. So I'm like, hey, let me go and work out of that office for a week, and I get to take 2 days off. I attend the conference. I speak at that conference back in 2014, and people liked what I had to say on a panel. That panel got me another interview on another channel, and it also got me, ironically, the guy who can't read or write got me a journalist position at Cointelegraph, and I was one of their first writers. So here's
Wow.
another funny story. So now I took that job because now I wanna contribute more to Bitcoin. So I started writing articles for Cointelegraph in 2014. I'm being paid maybe $100 for that to write an article, but it takes me all day to write an article. So I'm literally working a job that pays me $150,000, and I'm spending an entire Saturday from like 8 in the morning to like 7 at night, because that's how bad of a writer I am, writing this article for Cointelegraph. I would write like all kinds of stuff. Mostly I was writing like Bitcoin analytics and like analyzing the price of Bitcoin mostly, but I'd write other stuff like covering some news stories. But so that's what I was doing then. So that got me some popularity. People were reading my old Cointelegraph articles. Then I got on another podcast called the World Crypto Network. It's a YouTube channel. Andreas Antonopoulos started there, like doing some videos, and then other people did, and then I got on there. And first it was a one-time thing, and then like a month later they asked me to come back, and then a month later they asked me to come back, and then suddenly it became a weekly thing. Hey Tone, why don't you do a show with us every Friday? And then it became almost a daily thing. Hey, Tone, we want to start another show on this YouTube channel. It's going to be Bitcoin price. It's going to be 3 times a week, plus my Friday, right? So now I become a consistent person on another YouTube channel, and I'm growing my following. And people are like, Tone, when are you going to start your own channel? Tone, when are you going to start your own channel? So in late 2016, I started my own channel. And even then I was like, oh my God, I have like 1,000 people watching me on the World Crypto Network. I start my channel, first episode, 90 views. And I'm like, whoa, where are you people, right? Like you were all asking me to start my channel. But then the bull market comes in 2017, and in 2017 I got a huge following. I was picking up 1,000 Twitter followers a day. I had like 25 views per episode on my YouTube channel, and right now my numbers are half that, and it's been 4 years since. So because other YouTubers came in. Back then, I was one of the first YouTubers to do what I did with Bitcoin price analysis. Now there's hundreds, and they are way better at YouTube. And that's not my thing. Like my thing is showing up and doing a good presentation, or just getting on a live stream and just winging it and talking. I don't like to do editing. That's too tedious for me. So my YouTube channel, like it doesn't like play to the game of clickbaity titles and thumbnails and uh, constantly researching YouTube algorithms. You know what? If people want to listen to me, they can listen to me. If they don't, they don't. This is why I wasn't a very good high school teacher. It's like, you want to do your homework, do your homework. If you don't want to do your homework, I'll just fail you and I don't really care. Well, like I wasn't a very like I like teaching people that want to learn, that want to be there, which is why 1 year of high school teaching and I knew that wasn't for me. When you're teaching at a university, it's better because people do want to be there a lot more than they want to be in high school. But right now, teaching trading and technical analysis and speaking at conferences, people want to be there. Like I want to teach people that are either that are spending time and money to be there. And I also learned that like when you give something away for free, it's not respected. So when you teach people for free about how to use Bitcoin, they're not going to learn it properly. But when you charge them a lot of money, they're going to take it seriously. In fact, the more money you charge to teach something, the more seriously they're going to take it. But then you get to a level where people are charging an unreasonable amount of money because they can and they're charismatic, but they're not good teachers. But they're unethically, morally okay with charging people a bunch of money and scamming them on the information. So it's a delicate balance. Like honestly, like in my experience, those that beg for discounts on your courses are the biggest headaches in those courses.
Yeah, no, I see a lot of that also with like a gym membership, right? You pay for the gym membership, but it's up to you to actually go to the gym, get in there, do the work, or you could hire a trainer maybe to help you. I mean, everyone has a different style, but it's what you put in. And I teach at USC here, and I feel the same way. Like I assume that the students are taking the classes in a specific major because they're passionate about it, they want to learn. But at the end of the day, if they don't want to follow the directions, they want to, say, oh, I was stressed out, I didn't turn this in, which by the way, today more and more students are doing that. They're like, you know what, it was a stressful week, or I felt, anxiety, I couldn't turn it in, which I would have never, I can't imagine myself doing that when I was in school, like coming up with something like that. I mean, whether it was true or not, I would do the work, I would just get it done. But today it's like, you know what, I couldn't do it. I was overwhelmed. I was stressed out. And it's just such a different mentality. And I don't know if it's like, I mean, obviously we could get into it, but we don't have to, of just younger generations not being as like strong and having that fortitude to get over adversity the way that we had to, and coming from immigrant families, you're built to be very, very strong. But yeah, no, I totally think it's what you put in at the end of the day, whether it's school, a course, it's up to you to kind of create your own destiny, which I also like because the responsibility falls on your hands. It's not on anybody else's.
Right. Like if I was back teaching at a university today, because now that it's been 15 years, I would do it very differently. Even back when I was teaching at university, all my exams, maybe not some of the math stuff, but I was teaching computer science, I was teaching business. It wasn't just open book, it was open anything. I would make questions so that like I want an even playing field. I'm like, look, your final exam is going to be open book, open notebook, open anything, right? But if you think you don't need to study and you're just going to show up, I'm like, you're going to realize how hard it is. Like when I ask a question and it's from a chapter in of a book you're supposed to read, if you think you're going to find the answer to that question because you have the book in front of you in less than 5 minutes, you are wrong. You need to know exactly where to go look for it if you need to look for it. And today, I would give people more problem-solving questions. Like you have to realize that in the real world, you have Google. You have it in front of you. You have to be able to decipher good information from garbage information on Google. So if I was teaching in a university today, I would get creative and come up with questions, allowing people to use Google to try and answer those questions. And I would show them how they're wrong, if they're wrong, right? Because it would I would get that creative, because you do have to adjust for the real world and today's mentality of people, and being able to quickly find the information, process that information, and come up with a solution to a problem is probably the number one skill employer wants.
Yeah. Well, just to start to wrap up, I'm kind of curious. You're very passionate about a lot of things outside of Bitcoin, in Bitcoin. What's something that you wish people would ask you, or what's something that's on your mind lately that you want to share and talk about?
Well, more education about Bitcoin. Like, I'm living in a world of scams, and the amount of scams that, uh, well, Bitcoin, but more so Ethereum, has opened for the world is really, really frightening. And it bothers me how everyone around me just wants to print their own money and create their own tokens. And they don't see the vision. They don't see the how Bitcoin can actually change the world. There's more to the world than getting rich. But if Bitcoin succeeds, you will be rich because Bitcoin succeeded. So I wish more people thought about that. I know it's a capitalist society. I'm not going to force anyone to do anything, but a better understanding of why you should run a node, why you should process your own transactions, what makes Bitcoin special. What did Satoshi solve? Like, he solved proof of work. Proof of work was the missing piece. None of this exists if it's not for proof of work. So proof of work is the key element that makes it all work. And just a more in-depth understanding as to what makes Bitcoin special, as opposed to I can get rich by just holding it. Because everyone that thought they would get rich by holding it sold it at like $5. There's a reason why Bitcoin. I mean, I like to call myself a shitcoin minimalist or a digital scarcity maximalist, not a Bitcoin maximalist. Uh, People say like, oh, Tone got lucky because he was in Bitcoin early. No, no, Roger Ver got lucky because he was in Bitcoin early, because he never understood what Bitcoin actually meant. And that's why he started his own competing coin. Those are the people that got lucky, not the people that stuck with it from day one and still understand the special nature of Bitcoin. So that's probably my takeaway message. And hopefully I'll be doing my Understanding Bitcoin conference in more places around the world, where we teach people how to set up wallets, how to set up nodes, how to use Lightning, how to start using more confidential transactions, how to use Bitcoin's side chains and other layers, because I do believe it's going to be the backbone of the financial system, as well as other computer systems, the way the internet is also now the backbone of the financial system, just in a slightly different way.
Do you see any threat to Bitcoin?
I wrote it's wow, funny that you asked that. If I can, I don't know if I wanted to screen share, but for those watching, if you go to tonevays.com and you go to the blog, and in the blog section, again, I was trying to write articles. I was such a bad writer, but I think the second or the third article I ever wrote in 2014 was titled, "What is the biggest threat to Bitcoin?" And the answer back then is the same answer I give today. And it's been 7 years. The biggest threat to Bitcoin is misinformation. It's not technological, it's misinformation. People not understanding Bitcoin, especially regulators, people scared of Bitcoin, governments, Federal Reserve, Treasury Secretary, Federal Reserve Chief, scared of Bitcoin. Fear. Fear is the biggest threat to Bitcoin. They need to embrace Bitcoin. The country that embraces Bitcoin will get the brightest and the smartest and the wealthiest people inside their border. And they will build the most incredible things. That is how America became the superpower. It wasn't their military, it was the freedom for people to come, attracting the smartest and brightest people in the world is what made America a superpower. And fear of Bitcoin will destroy America as a superpower. The only way it will stay that way is if they embrace Bitcoin and allow people to be free in their financial transactions, watching them build some of the most incredible companies and technology with the wealth that they would get by having financial freedom with Bitcoin. So I wrote back then it was misinformation, just and I believe that the altcoin space and the shitcoin space is contributing to that information, the misinformation on Bitcoin. And I see people in that space as dangerous to Bitcoin as the central bankers. I don't. They're just coming from a different perspective. If I had to choose one over another, I would take the shitcoin space because those people will eventually learn their lesson, and also they don't write the rules to imprison other people for like their financial transactions, or in general, for because they don't make the laws. But misinformation is the only thing. I'm confident in mining. I'm confident in Bitcoin's code. I'm confident that people are going to run nodes and keep the network decentralized. I'm running a node. I'm keeping the network decentralized. But I think Bitcoin is the safest asset anyone can own right now. The safest asset. I am that confident in holding Bitcoin into the future. But I am worried that people don't properly understand it, and I'm going to continue to do my job to try and educate them. I'm going to be focusing on Latin America and Africa. I've completely given up on the West, especially Australia and especially Canada. Mexico still has a shot. The US still has a chance, at least, the states like Texas and Florida have a shot. Europe is mostly lost. They're not going to get it. But if we can reach Africa, if people like myself and Saifedean and Jimmy Song, if people like us can spend enough time with the economists and the governments of those countries, we can try to convince them not to be scared of Bitcoin, because that is its biggest threat.
If you could go back in time and talk to yourself when you were young, maybe, Tone when he was 13 and just came to the US, what would you tell him?
Oh boy. You know, probably nothing. I'm happy with how my life turned out. I mean, of course, we've all made mistakes. But I don't regret those mistakes because it led me to this point. Another funny story is I bought my apartment in New York in like 2009, and then the market crashed, and I had a little bit of money saved up, and $40,000, and I went down to Miami because I can buy an apartment on South Beach for $40,000. These apartments today go for $400,000 to $500,000. I could have bought it for $40,000, and I didn't. And in a way, that's a regrettable decision. But in another way, it might not have led me to where I am today. Maybe if I was too busy with that apartment, I would never have discovered Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. So who knows how life would have turned out. So I would advise against some, maybe relationship changes, personal stuff, but which also, again, had I gotten married, maybe I would not have taken a risk on Bitcoin. So you never know. Well, like altering something in the past is not something I dwell on. Probably would have talked my way out of some investments in 2012, 2013. Hey, don't start that business, because if I didn't start that business, that money would have gone into Bitcoin. So maybe something like that. And my dad warned me. Like one of my dad's jobs was having like a deli in Brooklyn, and when I told him I was going to open a physical business, he's like, "You're an idiot. But if you're not going to listen to me, you'll learn the hard way." And I did. I did learn the hard way. And that $70,000 that I spent on that business in 2014, mostly end of 2014, mostly 2015 into 2016, Bitcoin was under $1,000 back then, and all I could do was watch and analyze it, because all my money was going to support a business because I didn't want to admit that I would fail.
Wow. Okay. Well, you have a fascinating story. I'm so glad I got the chance to hear more about you. Last question, price prediction for the end of this year and price prediction for 2025.
Sure. So earlier this year, I sent out a tweet saying Bitcoin will hit 100,000 by end of year. I sent it early. I've been saying it early in the year. I think I tweeted it out in like April or May. and I'm sticking to it. It's been pinned to my profile, to my Twitter profile ever since. I'm sticking to it. I still think we'll be in the vicinity of 100,000. Whether it's 90 and moving up, that's good enough. If we hit, let's say, 95 next month with some crazy, FOMO, and then pull back, that's good enough for me. So this year, about 100,000. I've had that view all year. And for 2025, that means we've gone past the next halving. I think I would say 250,000, followed by a bit of a pullback to as low as 100K, and already on a trajectory back up. So if Bitcoin is not $250,000 by 2025, I would be very disappointed.
All right, well, Tone, as we wrap up, where can people find you?
Sure. I have our YouTube channel. Everything is under my name, Tone Vays, tonevays.com, Tone Vays YouTube, Tone Vays on Twitter and Instagram. And the events that I organize around the world, the next one coming up will be in Las Vegas. So that's close to you. So you have to come down. That's called Unconfiscatable. I found something to do with the website, Unconfiscatable. And we have a conference, Unconfiscatable, and hopefully understanding Bitcoin will go around the world. I want to bring it to Africa and a few other regions. That's going to happen in later in 2022. And the financial summits, which are more high-end events for professional traders, money managers, and they take place in very exotic destinations like Bali or Dominican Republic, or maybe even Zanzibar in Africa. And check me out there as well.